Alright, hello everyone. This is Addy, and this is Computer Science with Addy. Alright, hello. As I've said, I am Addy, and this is my a new user to YouTube, and this is going to be my first video ever. Okay, alright, I'm a computer science student in a university, and this is currently I'm currently taking my third trimester out of 12, and for this video, I'm simply going to show you what goes through the mind of, a programmer trying to translate to a different language. Now, for my first two trimesters in university, I've actually been accustomed to, or well, technically required to, use C, the C programming language. Now, for the first trimester, we had our logic formulation and introductory programming. For the second trimester, we had our data structures in C. And finally, for a third trimester, which is what I'm taking now, we will be having object-oriented programming in Java. Okay, so I'm just going to show you my thought process, and let's see how we're going to solve this while transitioning my mind from the C way of thinking to something more object-oriented like Java. All right, so let's head over to our editor here. Oh, actually, let's read the problem first. Now, write a program that greets a person by his first name. The user will provide a name with the format last name, first name, then middle name. Now, these are our sample runs here. So we've got our last name, and then our first name. Same with this one, and then our first name. And we're supposed to greet them. Oh, hi there, Maria. Oh, hi there, William. And oh, hi there, James. Okay. Now, assume all inputs will always have a last name and at least one first name. And for multiple first names, we're supposed to only extract the first one that's going to come out and use that to greet the user. Alright, so let's go to our IDE here, or text editor really, if you prefer that kind of thing. Alright, let's see the problem that we're supposed to do first. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is basically ask the user for input. Okay, so that's going to be our goal for now. So, alright. So in Java, unlike a programming language like C, it's kind of complicated because we have to deal with the notion of classes, the notion of permissions, the notion of accessibility, to try and tinker with our functions here. So in C, we would usually declare our main function simply by using int main. So that's the function return data type, and the main function, which will then be called by the program. Okay, so now in Java, in object-oriented programming, it doesn't quite work that way. So we need to declare a class, because a class is a reference object where our methods are stored into. So we're going to declare a public class. So this is the scope. You see, this word public means this class can be accessed from outside this file, the string exercise.java. Now, Java requires that our class name be the same as our file name. So we're going to have to copy that string exercise, and then we have our class set. Next, we need to declare the main function, and the main function, or method if you would like to call it that, has a specific signature that we have to follow in Java. And for Java, that is public static void main. And within the main parameters here, we have a string reference to args, an array of arguments that we will take in. So let me explain this signature here. So public, you want it to be in a public scope, so that this method is accessible to those classes or those lines of code that is outside of this class. Okay, so public, so it's accessible outside this class, and this one, since this is public, this entire thing is accessible from outside the file. Okay, so static is, well, let's say memory is actually allocated. I don't think that's the right word, but memory is divided into two parts, at least two major parts that I know of up until now. So that's the heap and the stack. So the heap, this is where your dynamically allocated variables are, or your variables in general. That's where they are stored in your heap. While the stack, this is where uh, our functions or our methods are called or are stored. So this is why we have something that we call the call stack, because it's a stack of which functions are being called. So, for example, the main function is the first function to be called, therefore it is at the bottom of the stack. Now, if you call another method, it's gonna go on top of that. More on that when we reach the notion of memory allocation, manual memory allocation, or stack tracing. But for now, this is what we have. Static simply means that it's basically gonna stay there in the stack. Then the void means, well, it's the return type for main, and main doesn't return anything. Now this is one of the biggest culture shocks when I started programming into Java, because main usually returns an integer. In C, we usually return a 0 if the program ran correctly or ran as expected and exited without any errors. Now, and we also return a non-zero variable, or sorry, a non-zero value if there is a problem that has occurred with the program. So that's your exit code. So usually it's exit with code 1, -1. If it's 0, there's usually no problem. So that's the way to tell the system, the operating system in C, that something may or may not have gone wrong. Alright, so it's a new thing for me because main apparently returns void in Java, and I'm not accustomed to that. Next is we have our parameters, our method parameter here. We got string arguments. Okay, so string basically is a data type, and the arguments array here is well, it takes all the arguments. So now, how do I explain this? So when you call a function or a class file, for example, if I call string exercise, for example, though this class file currently doesn't exist, when you place a space, the program, sorry, well, I'm not speaking too well today. The program actually can read what's next here. Now these are what you call your execution arguments. So for example, I have ASD here. So our array here, the 0th element of the array will contain a string that says ASD. So that's pretty nifty. That's pretty yeah, pretty handy. Yeah, we can use for future stuff. Now notice we have void. It's a data type. It starts with a small letter. String is another data type, but it starts with a big letter. Now, why is that? Okay, so in Java, another thing that I had to adjust on for object-oriented programming is that you have two types of variables. Firstly, you have your primitive types, and second, you have your reference types. So primitive types are types of variables that hold the actual data itself, and it's built right into the language, like int, boolean, float, character or char rather, short, long, double, those types of data types. While your reference types are, well, let's say they're classes, I guess, references, and they point to an address that is stored in their memory address. I know that sounds weird. So they're allocated a block of memory, but it isn't the actual value that's stored in there, but it's an address to something else. Now that's what you call a reference type. All right, so let's actually start getting this done. So first, we have here full name. So we're gonna have to ask for the full name. So the way we're gonna ask for that is simply by printing a first statement. So we're gonna print system.out.println. Now here we have a couple of options here when we have print. You have your print, which will just print whatever you indicate. You have a print line, which will print what you indicate, and then it's going to print a new line. And then you can also print an object. I haven't tried this yet. Then you got printf. Okay, now printf is cool because you get to deal with format specifiers like how you usually do it in C. Okay, so print just like that, and then we are going to print here full name colon space. All right, so that's simply to tell the user to input his or her full name. All right, perfect. Now, next is we're gonna have to take user input, because the next thing that we're gonna have to deal with here is the user input. That's delimited by a comma and a space. Okay, so now how do we get inputs? Okay, now this is another thing that bamboozled me a lot, because inputs is simply scanf, or in Python you would just x is equal to input, diba? Okay, that was a Filipino word. I don't know why I said diba. All right, yes, I'm Filipino. Okay, so the way you can take inputs in Java is you actually need to declare a scanner object. All right, so in order for us to declare a scanner object here, we need to import a specific package. Uh, a specific utility package that allows us to use the scanner object, or in other words, to tell the compiler that, oh, we're using the definition for this object. So that, my friends, is java.util.asterisk. All right, now let me explain this. Import. Now this is our directory, java.util.asterisk. Now, why asterisk? Why asterisk is a wildcard, meaning it's importing all of the modules or all of the packages that's under the utilities or under the util subdirectory, except the subdirectories. I know that kind of sounded weird, but that's how it goes. All right. We could also, if you want, you could also just say scanner like that. If you just want to use scanner, all right. So you can do an asterisk, works fine. But let's say for our application here, we're not gonna use anything but scanner, so let's just import scanner. All right. So let's declare our scanner variable. Let's call it keystream, because technically it's a stream of keystrokes. Okay, and then declare that new scanner variable, and we have to point the input of this scanner to a source, and that input stream is system.inputs. Okay, so that's gonna scan from our keyboard. Next is we need to do some variable declarations. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can solve this problem in C. Okay, so you can get each token by simply doing a scanf and a %s. Okay, you can get these tokens here, because scanf %s doesn't actually scan an entire line. It only scans up to where the first new line is. Because it sees a new line, it stops scanning. So this is going to be the first token, and this will be the second token. So that's how scanf works. Another way that we can kind of figure it out is by using gets or fgets. In C, fgets takes an entire line with a new line. So so there's two ways that I can see that we can work at it, though it's not limited to those two. So firstly is we can scan per token and look for some specific delimiters that will tell us when to stop scanning, or when do we have the right value that we want to print. Alright, so the second way is we can scan the entire line and then manually loop through it to find those delimiters and print the next token. For me, I think the first solution is way simpler. So the way that we can, or at least the way I think that we can implement this, is we can declare a Boolean variable. So a Boolean variable, which is technically not primitive to C, it's primitive to Java but not primitive to C, is a variable that can only hold two values, which are true and false. All right. So here's another difference between Java and C. Java doesn't have the concept of numeric Boolean, while C doesn't have the concept of Boolean true or false. Okay, C uses numeric values to indicate truth sources. So if you place a 0 inside an if statement, that simply denotes false. Anything that's not 0 is true. That's how C works. But in Java, that's not how it's gonna work. If you do that in Java, it's gonna complain at you because it won't accept numeric variables or numeric values as truth sources. Okay, so we need to declare Boolean variables for this to work. Now, since we're looking for certain delimiters, if you observe our string here, what separates the last name from the first name? It's the comma. Why can't it be the space? Because look at this. We have a surname that has two spaces in it. De La Cruz. There are two spaces, so we can't exactly use a space, because if we were to delimit it using the space, it would obviously get this one, which is not what we want. So we want to get Maria, and the delimiter between the last name and the first name here is a comma. All right. So my idea here is we can loop through and scan each token, look for that delimiter, and when that delimiter is found, we immediately know that the next token is the first name. Alright? So let's start this out. So boolean found. So this variable is simply just going to tell us whether or not we found the delimiter or not. So we're going to set this to false. And then next is we are going to declare our string here. So that's going to be our string that we are going to loop through. So set that as that. Now we are going to enter a do while loop that we where we will scan. So while not found, okay? Not the it's the same in C. The exclamation mark is not. So while we haven't found the delimited token, so we want to get the string per token. So the way we do that is we're going to use the key string here. So we're going to get the current string is equal to let's declare a new string. Now this is a new thing in Java. I mean, not a new thing in Java, but let me explain it. Okay, so why can't we just assign it using an assignment operator and not declare a new string object? Because when you do assign this, you're only assigning an address. Because remember, if you look at it in the C point of view, this is a reference variable, and reference variables hold addresses. So it's simply going to take the address of the string value, which is not really what you would want, because you could end up having conflicts with other strings. And it may take a deeper level of understanding to try and understand this, but trust me, you would like to declare new objects whenever you renew your string. Okay, so the current string is equal to new string keystream dot next. Alright, so there are a couple of things actually when we deal with this one, the next method. Okay, let me show you what we have here. So for the next method, we actually have a bit. Next byte, next double, next boolean. You guessed it. That's how we read variables or read values from the user. Alright, so since we're getting a string, we have two options here. Next and next line. Which one? We're simply going to use next for this one. Alright, so why? What's the difference between next and next line? The same difference between scanf and fgets. Scanf, when you do a %s on scanf, it scans one token, which is delimited by a space. So it scans one token, so that's what we want to do, while next line scans the entire line. Okay, so we have the string now, and the next is we need to check for the delimiter. Check for delimiter, which is in this case a comma. Okay, this is simple if else statement here. So if cur string dot index of, okay, don't worry, I'm going to explain this for a bit in a bit. So we're looking for a comma is not equal to -1. Then we set found to true, and then we break out of the loop. Alright, so let me explain. Why is this like this? What the heck does this mean? Okay, so if you deal with a language like C, if you're going to implement something that you have to look, for example, you have to look for a certain character inside an array or inside a certain string, you have to manually loop through every single element of your string and look for that certain character. Now, Java is an object-oriented programming language, and because of that, there are a lot of classes and modules that let us easily do stuff. Now, this is where the Java API comes in. So for those who don't know what API means, this is our application programming interface. Okay, so for the Java API, whoops. Alright, for the Java API, we can search for functions that would simply tell us, or would simply do stuff for us. So I'll give you an example. So if we're going to search for a function here, say for example we didn't know this yet. So how do we find a specific character within a string? So simple as searching Google for the Java API documentation. So an essential skill in object-oriented programming is learning how to read documentation. So we're gonna go Java string search substring. Okay, not such a good thing, but okay, I think this will work. So let's check here. We can use this link, no problem. Alright, so it's gonna give us some functions here that are available for a string object. Alright, so you could just read these. Alright, so for the purposes of our video today, it's this one, that what we're looking for. So it's going to look for a specific object or a specific character that we've specified and searches its index. As we talk about arrays, we're going to understand what indices are, index. But for now, I'm just going to say that they're numbers that indicate a position in an array. And we're not going to expound on that right now. So, what this function basically does, based on this description, is it searches for that specific character that you've specified and returns the index. If this function cannot find that character, it returns a -1. So we can use this. Alright. So, reading this now, if the current string contains this, it shouldn't be -1, right? Because if it doesn't contain a comma, it will return a -1. So, every time this loop iterates, I don't know if you can see my mouse. Okay, every time this loop iterates, it gets a new token from the stream. Okay? So, we're basically checking every token. So once it finds a token that has the comma in it, we're gonna exit out of the loop. Alright. Because this condition will then be false, so we're gonna exit out of this loop. Alright, so let's go back to our problem here. So if we're gonna find that token, for example, we scan this, no comma, okay, proceed. Scan this, no comma, okay, proceed. Oh, we have a comma. And if you look at the trend here, what comes after the comma is immediately the first name of who we're trying to look for. So given that first name, we already know that after the comma, it's already the first name. So basically, we are sure that the next string is the first name. So we're gonna get that input again from the key stream. Next. Alright, so we got that we got the first name right there. And then the next thing that we do is we print our message. System.out.println. Oh, hi there, comma. Alright. This is another thing that's pretty good. I like this. Let me explain this in a bit. This is what we call string concatenation, which doesn't, it's not primitive to C. You have to use separate functions in separate libraries in C for you to achieve concatenation in strings, like the strcat function or the strcopy function in C. So here in Java, we can simply use the addition operator, because if the moment it sees a string and the addition operator, it immediately tells itself that it is concatenation and not numeric addition. So we're going to concatenate these three strings here and print them out. So once we print that line, if you can see, we still have this error here because this key stream hasn't been closed. So we close this key stream. Alright, so this is our complete program. Now, we need to check if it works and it's running. Now, if you've installed the JDK, the Java Development Kit, I think it's Kit, yeah. For me specifically, I have JDK 14 and JRE that comes with it. So if it doesn't work, you kind of have to tinker around the path variables in your system, because that's what I had to do. Anyway, so if we're gonna compile our program here, I don't know if it's big enough to see on the screen, but if we're gonna compile this program here, we're going to use a keyword called javac. So that's javac, Java compile, okay, Java and then a C, and then our file name, which is string exercise .java and simply hit enter. That's gonna compile, and we have no we have no warning messages, we have no error messages, so we should be able to proceed. So java string exercise.java, and then if we want to run it, we just say java without the c, java, and then string exercise. We don't even need a file extension. Enter, and now it's gonna ask for a full name. So now let's just copy something like this. Let's copy this, paste it right there, and we got our output. Oh, hi there, Maria. So let's do that again with this one, just to make sure all of our test cases are passing. Oh, hi there, James. I really don't know if you can see that though, but it's okay. Next, Bill Gates right here. Whoops, forgot. There we go. Open that and insert the name. Oh, hi there, William. And so our program works. Okay, so yes, so this is basically the structure when you do object-oriented programming. It's very, very different from C. Maybe in the future I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison video about C and Java. So stay tuned for that, and subscribe if you want to see something like that. And I guess this is it for this video. This has been Computer Science with Addy, and see you soon.